Two of the BBC's flagship radio stations have lost millions of listeners in the past year, while its commercial rivals are thriving. Joining me now is media commentator Nigel Pauley. Nigel, thanks for joining us. So what has gone wrong? We're talking primarily about Radio 4, BBC Radio 4, and indeed my own alma mater, BBC Radio 2. So what has happened? What's gone awry, do you think?
Well, only the BBC. I mean, Radio 4 has lost 1.2 million and Radio 2 has lost 121,000. I think Zoe Ball's Radio 2 show, which you used to go out before, has lost nearly 100,000 listeners. The basic problem with the BBC is, A, it's gone woke and gone broke, which is what obviously often happens.
Yeah.
But also it is actually making programmes not for people who listen. It is making programmes for people who aren't listening. So basically, it gets rid of presenters that people who listen like. Radio 4's listeners are aged around 55, 56, actually could be 59. And Radio 2 listeners are all over the age of 50. But they've got this youth drive, as ever, youthful presenters that the people who listen aren't interested in, playing music, which actually doesn't appeal to their core base. So it's a sort of strange cycle where they're appealing to people they want to listen to them by playing music that the people who listen don't like. And the content with Radio 4, which I used to have to cover when I worked in newspapers, we used to have to listen. I don't think newspapers bother anymore because the stuff is not relevant. Apart from the political interview, a lot of the other stuff that Radio 4's Today programme has now is totally irrelevant to most people's lives in the rest of Britain.
So you said, you used the phrase go woke or go broke, or go woke and you've gone broke, or whatever you said. What are, for example, the sorts of items that you've heard on Radio 4's Today programme and you have thought, God, I don't care about this, this isn't aimed at me, this is dreadfully woke, it's box ticking, it's completely unedifying, it's also unentertaining, I'm bored rigid, it's dreary beyond all imagining. I'm really talking about myself here, aren't I? And my response to these items. So let me ask you for yours. Give me an example of something you heard on the Today programme and you just thought, this is wrong, this is all wrong.
It's very worthy. They tend to be subjects about things which appeal to people in the BBC and in London. It might be cycling issues, it might be issues with pollution, climate change, you name it. Any woke subject that they feel is important to them is put out. And yet there's a vast number of people who live in Halifax, who live in Barnsley, who live in Sunderland, who live in Norwich, who have other things in life. They want to have a serious talk in the morning with people who run the country. They want to hear from cabinet ministers and from the opposition, telling us what is happening to the country. They want to hear from people on Radio 4, what is happening with the cost of living crisis? Why is my petrol going up? Why is my milk now, 50 pence more than it was a couple of months ago? Why can't I buy eggs? I don't hear those questions being answered on Radio 4. What I do hear is a lot of the subjects which, as I say, appeal to the BBC, people who go on Brompton Cycles and cycle helmets and they get in, and that they may well appeal to them. But listening figures will prove that 1.2 million people don't think it appeals to them anymore.
I mean, one of the things that seemed to me obsessed BBC bosses, and I spent 30 years of my career there, is the idea that if you don't somehow attract a younger audience, your audience will die. Your audience will get older and older. They'll die. They'll shuffle off this mortal coil. And all your listeners will be in the graveyard. And the youth won't have gravitated or graduated to Radio 4 or Radio 2. And so they won't be listening. Everyone else will be dead. And they'll get themselves into a terrible, disastrous state. So that, I think, is the reason for their aiming constantly to attract younger listeners. But they don't seem to have acquired the skill of attracting younger listeners without alienating existing listeners and making them feel, for God's sake, what the hell are they trying to make me listen to?
Well, it's true. The trouble is, A, the people that they worry about their listeners dying. Well, if you're 50, you've still got probably another 25 to 30 years of listening to Radio 2. My mum, who died last year, was in her mid-80s. She'd listened to Radio 2 religiously from when you were on all the way through Simon Mayo.
Yeah.
So, the fact is, the younger people, I've got a teenage son, 18-year-old son, he doesn't listen to radio. Kids don't listen to radio. And they have this online thing. Charlotte Moore, I think she's director of content or something. She used to be head of television. She was saying that it's all about digital and people are going on to the Sounds app and whatever. They are. But for a lot of people, you listen to radio in the shower, you listen to it in the kitchen, you listen to it in the car, and you may well listen to the app. But the core people who want to listen are older. Older people sit down with their Telegraph or their Mail or whatever and listen to the radio, listen to Radio 4, listen to Radio 2, whatever their feeling is. Younger people don't tend to do that. They listen to podcasts, they listen to YouTube, whatever. So
well, let me give you the glad tidings from TalkTV, Nigel. Let me tell you what's going on here, because I can't resist telling you, because why should I resist telling you? It's true.
Why not tell us?
Our Jars, this show, Vanessa Feltz show, up 25% year on year. So that's pretty cool, isn't it?
It's going to be really up this evening as well, isn't it? When you've got great people on as well, great guests. We just had people on before.
Exactly, people like you on. It's a given, it's a shoo-in. So we are rejoicing here. We're very, very glad. And all my new lovely listeners and vibrant viewers, welcome, because it's an absolute delight to us that you have found us and that you're pleased to be here. Nigel, thanks so much for joining me. Great talking to you.